Hi, Cassandra. I wanted to leave you some feedback on your week 1 writing assignment. Your formatting looks good, very professional. I like the way this submission moves, meaning you provide clear context, you give an example to illustrate your point here in the middle, and then finally you have the application here. There's just a couple things here and there that I want to talk to you about. First off, your opening sentence. You actually have a sentence fragment here. So you have an incomplete sentence. So a sentence fragment means that the sentence is either missing a subject, a verb, or some cases both. And it's too informal to use in professional contexts, right? So, for example, for writing for the college classroom. So I think this is what's going on here. Let me read this to you out loud. Disagreements, such a common thing that we have in our daily lives. So I think you want disagreements to be your subject, but what you're missing here is a verb. And I think what you're doing is relying on an oral strategy. So you probably heard the way that I read that. Disagreements, such a common thing we have in our daily lives, right? Like that's a strategy that's really familiar to us from commercials and maybe even speeches, right? It's an oral strategy, but it's something that doesn't translate well on the page, right? In scenarios where the communication is solely meant to be read. So really the easiest way to fix this is to just include a verb. So know that when you're writing in professional context, you need to write in complete sentences. The other thing is you present this idea, and then it really feels like in this next sentence, you just kind of repeat the same idea. So you kind of have some unnecessary repetition here where it feels like we're just kind of moving in a circle. The better thing to do here is instead of just repeating yourself, go back to this idea and illustrate it more clearly. So either try to explain why you think humans have disagreements, or perhaps give some examples of the things that we commonly argue about, right? So we argue about political ideologies, we argue about religion, and gosh, sometimes we even argue about where we're gonna go out to eat tonight, right? So one of the things that you want to read for is unnecessary repetition, where you're just kind of repeating an idea over and over again instead of moving forward to a new point. I end up really liking the example that you provide to illustrate your own personal agreement. I'll tell you what threw me off. When I got to this point, I thought, okay, well, she's going to write something about COVID. But it wasn't until I got down here that I really realized what you were doing. And I honestly think that if you had, no, that's not what I meant to do. Let's try that again. I honestly think that, yes, there we go. If this ended up being a new paragraph, your movement would make more sense. So here's what I'd like you to do on your own. Read this first paragraph over again, and then read it the way that I have it indented here as this and this being separate chunks, and see if the movement is more logical that way. I think you're going to hear what I'm seeing. One other thing that I want to talk to you about, well, actually two things, but here's the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about. I really like your list of examples here, right? So you said that my father and I had the most disagreements, and we had many arguments within my first 2 months back. And then you start giving us concrete examples of the things that you argued over. That's a great strategy, and that's what you did here is what I was looking for up here, right? So know that what you did here, that's what you should have done up here too. But your list is having some issues, and what's going on here is called, I'm going to edit your document a little bit, but it won't edit on your end, excuse me. It's called parallelism, and essentially what that means is items on a list should all be the same word type. So what I mean by that is if you start a list with a noun, every single item on that list should be a noun. If you do something like this, like noun, verb, noun, it's not going to read well, it's going to read awkwardly, and it's going to be incorrect. So let me show you what you did here. You've got noun, noun, like an adverb here, and then an adverb here. So what I would do is change this so you have noun, 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 noun. And this sentence is going to be so much stronger. Let me show you how to do that. We argued a lot about my piercings, my tattoos, my beliefs. And perhaps if you want to illustrate the fact that your beliefs are not the same, my new beliefs perhaps could do that. And finally, and my clothing, right? Does that make sense what I've done there? This sentence is far more clear and concise, right? So the other version, you're having an issue with parallelism, like I said, but with all those extra words such as how my beliefs have changed, you've got a lot of unnecessary wording there that's kind of like clogging up your ideas. And then I love the way that you structured this, right? Like we argued about this, this, and this, but the biggest argument that we had was about the boyfriend, and then you illustrate that pretty well. And then down here, I love the insight that you had down here. I wish that I handled it differently. I wish I would have just talked to my father and handled it more maturely. So, and then you say, I want to be able to do this. So I think a better way to end this thing, I really like that you've come to this conclusion, but it's a good idea to explain to the reader, what do you mean by handling things more carefully and maturely? Like particularly when you're heated in that moment. And sometimes it's going to probably just take the form of you walking away and you venting to somebody else, right? So I would offer that some of the steps that you had in this process were probably the careful and mature steps that you needed to take. But I think illustrate that for the reader, right? So the idea here is that whenever we make claims in writing, we want to do our best to support them with examples. And since this is your conclusion, these are your final ideas, I think it's really important that you illustrate exactly what you mean here, okay? But as a whole, I think it's working. There's just some tweaks here and there in your sentences and your ideas that just another round of editing would fix.